My son sat across from me in my own boardroom, the boardroom I built. He slid a document across the table with a smile I didn't recognize. "Sign this, Mother. It transfers controlling interest to me. The doctors agree you're not competent to manage your affairs anymore." My daughter stood behind him, nodding. The girl I nursed through scarlet fever. The boy I sent to the finest schools. They had doctors lined up, lawyers waiting. A facility in Coral Gables already chosen for me. $85 million in assets, my life's work, and they wanted me to hand it over like loose change. "Sign it," Wade repeated, "or we do this the hard way." They thought the old woman was finished. They thought 61 years of building an empire meant nothing against their forged signatures and bought psychiatrists. They had no idea I had been preparing for this war longer than they had been planning it. But let me start from the beginning, from the morning I first realized my own children wanted me dead. I appreciate you being here with me. Before we begin, if stories like this speak to you, a quick like truly helps. And tell me in the comments, have you ever been completely surprised by someone you thought you knew? I read every response. Some details in this story are adjusted for storytelling. The message at its heart is what matters most. The email notification pinged at 6:47 a.m., and 20 years of building an empire began to collapse in the time it took to read 3 lines. I stood at my kitchen counter in the Brickell penthouse I had earned with 16-hour days and sleepless nights, watching the Miami sunrise paint the bay in shades of gold. Lorraine Ashford, 61 years old, founder of Serenity Wellness, 12 spa locations across Florida. That is who I was. That is who someone was trying to destroy. The email was from First Republic Private Banking, routine notification, or so I thought. I opened it while my coffee cooled. Primary account holder authorization verified. Wire transfer completed, $240,000 from Serenity Wellness Coral Gables operating account to SW Holdings LLC. I had not authorized this transfer. I had never heard of SW Holdings LLC. My fingers trembled as I pulled up the transaction details. There was my signature, perfect and damning, authorizing the transfer. And beside it, a co-signer, Wade Ashford, my son. I zoomed in on the signature, studied every curve, every stroke. It was nearly perfect. The spacing was correct. The pressure points matched my natural hand. But there, at the end of my name, was a detail so small that most people would never notice it. The lowercase y had a double loop. My hand does not loop the y, never has. But Wade has made that loop since he was 7 years old. His third-grade teacher tried to correct it. I told her to leave him alone, to let him keep his little quirks. How long had my son been practicing my signature? How many nights, while I cooked his dinner, while I paid his car insurance, while I bailed him out of one failed business after another? How many times had he traced my name, perfecting every letter except the one he could not change because it was written into his muscle memory? I did not scream. I did not cry. I called the bank. "Mrs. Ashford, our records show your signature was verified through standard protocols." The co-signer, Mr. Wade Ashford, is listed as authorized personnel on the account. I did not authorize him. I did not sign this document. Our fraud department can open an investigation, but the signature matches our samples on file. This may take several weeks to resolve. 5. Several weeks. By then, everything I had built could be dismantled piece by piece. I knew this. And somewhere, I suspected, my son knew it too. I spent the next 3 hours combing through my accounts. The Coral Gables transfer was only the beginning. I found authorization requests pending on 2 other branches. I found a power of attorney document I had never signed, waiting for notarization. I found my empire being hollowed out from the inside while I drank my morning coffee and watched the sunrise like a fool. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 a.m. Nobody rings my doorbell without an appointment. Nobody. Not deliveries, not neighbors, not the building concierge. My life is scheduled down to 15-minute increments because that is what it takes to run 12 spa locations. An unscheduled visitor meant only one thing. Someone wanted to catch me off guard. I pressed the intercom. The lobby camera showed two figures, one in an expensive suit carrying a leather briefcase. The other was a ghost I had not seen in 2 decades. Vernon Prescott stood in my doorway looking 20 years older than the man who had walked out on me and our 2-year-old son. His eyes carried the hollow desperation of someone drowning in debt, grasping for anything that might keep him afloat. "Hello, Lorraine," he said. "It has been a long time." 20 years. I kept my voice steady. "You left when Wade was 2 years old. Now you want something?" The lawyers stepped forward, all rehearsed sympathy and polished shoes. "Mrs. Ashford, I am Theodore Whitman, representing Mr. Prescott. We are here to serve you with a civil complaint regarding marital property acquired during your legal marriage." Marital property. During our legal marriage. I looked at the man who had sworn to love me forever. In his eyes, I saw not guilt, but the drowning desperation of someone who needed a lifeline. I was the lifeline, and someone had told him to grab it. I took the lawsuit papers from the lawyer's hand. My name, Vernon's name, dates stretching back to a marriage that had apparently never legally ended. And at the bottom, a demand for 50% of Serenity Wellness, the company I had built from $8,000 borrowed dollars while Vernon was gone. Bank fraud at dawn, lawsuit by mid-morning. 2 attacks hitting simultaneously from 2 different directions. This was not coincidence. This was coordination. "Thank you, Theodore," I said, my voice calm as still water. "I will have my attorney contact you." I looked past the lawyer, directly into Vernon's shifting eyes. He glanced away. He had always been weak. That was why he left, why he gambled, why he was standing in my doorway now as someone else's weapon. But as I studied his face, I knew something he did not know. I knew Vernon Prescott had not come here on his own. Someone had sent him. Someone had timed this perfectly with the bank fraud. And I could guess exactly who. My son had chosen the most expensive restaurant in Coral Gables for our lunch. The kind of place where you destroy someone's life between the appetizer and the main course. I walked in 2 hours after Vernon left my doorway. Lawsuit papers tucked in my purse next to a burner phone I had purchased at a gas station on the way. The timing of the morning's attacks was no coincidence. Someone had orchestrated Vernon's return. And now I would let my son believe he was orchestrating me. Wade Ashford, 38, and dressed in a suit that cost more than his monthly salary, sat across from me with the smile of a man who had already won. Beside him sat Kezia Ashford, my daughter-in-law of 4 years, sliding a stack of documents across the white tablecloth with manicured fingers that had never touched honest work. "Mom, you've worked so hard," Wade said, his voice dripping with rehearsed concern. "Let us handle the stress now. This restructuring protects the family legacy." I looked at the documents. Dense legal language designed to confuse, signature lines highlighted in yellow. A deadline Friday, October 10th, 4 days away. The same Friday Vernon's lawsuit was scheduled for its first hearing. "I just need my reading glasses, dear." I fumbled in my purse, letting my hand brush the burner phone. "These documents are so complicated for an old woman." Kezia's smile tightened. "It's really quite simple. Mother, sign here, here, and here." Her nail tapped each line. "By Friday, everything will be simplified." Simplified. A word that meant by Friday, I would own nothing. Have you ever watched your own child lie to your face while smiling? Have you ever had to smile back, knowing that the boy you raised, the boy whose fevers you nursed and whose tears you dried, was now calculating how to take everything you built? I smiled back. "What exactly am I signing, sweetheart?" I squinted at the pages. My eyes aren't what they used to be. Wade leaned forward. Patient, the way predators are patient. "It's a restructuring of Serenity Wellness for tax optimization, moving your ownership into a family trust that I'll manage. It protects the business from lawsuits." From lawsuits. He knew about Vernon. Of course he knew. Lawsuits? I let my voice tremble. What lawsuits? "Nothing to worry about, Mom. That's the whole point. Let me handle the complicated things. I pretended to read while my mind cataloged every detail. The documents were comprehensive. Every spa location, every bank account, every trademark, by Friday. Wade Ashford would control 100% of Serenity Wellness. Or so he believed. I need to think about this, I said, gathering the papers. Can I take these home? Read them properly? Wade's smile flickered. The deadline is Friday. Mom. I know, dear. I'm old, not stupid. I patted his hand. Let your mother read the fine print. I'll sign before Friday. I left the restaurant with the documents in my purse and rage in my throat. The valet brought my car. I drove 6 blocks, pulled into a supermarket parking lot, and sat there watching seagulls fight over trash near the dumpsters. The parking lot was empty, except for those scavengers. I had never felt more kinship with them than I did in that moment. We were all fighting for scraps while someone else took the feast. I pulled out the burner phone and dialed the only number programmed into it. Constance Thornton, retired judge and the only person alive who knew about SW Holdings, answered on the first ring. They moved, I said. Tell me, I told her. The bank fraud, Vernon's lawsuit, the restructuring papers, the Friday deadline. They don't know about SW Holdings, do they? Constance's voice was calm. The calm of a woman who had seen worse conspiracies from the bench. No one knows. That's how we designed it. Then they're fighting for control of a subsidiary. They think Serenity Wellness is the empire. They have no idea it's just the visible part. Vernon filed this morning. Wade moved money this morning. Too coordinated for coincidence. Agreed. Someone is advising them. Probably someone with legal training. Constance paused. The court hearing is in 6 days. The restructuring deadline is in 4. They're trying to box you in from both directions. Can we move faster? We'll have to. 6 days, 144 hours, and my son thought I was a confused old woman who could not find her reading glasses. Is that enough time? I asked. It's enough, Constance said. If we move now, I need you to go to the Coral Gables Spa tomorrow. Not to work, to observe. See what changes Wade has already made. See who's loyal and who's been turned. And then we start dismantling his plan piece by piece. I sat in that parking lot as the Miami sun turned orange over the strip mall rooftops. In my purse, Vernon's lawsuit demanding half of everything. In my hand, a burner phone with Constance's number. In my head, the first moves of a chess game my son did not know had already begun. Wade thought he was stealing a company. He did not know that Serenity Wellness was only the surface. Beneath it, invisible and untouchable, sat SW Holdings, the real empire, the one I had built specifically for a moment like this. My son was fighting for control of something he could never truly own. 6 days. I had built an empire in 20 years. 6 days would be enough to save it. The next morning, I put SW Holdings out of my mind and focused on what Constance had asked me to do: observe. See what changes Wade had already made. Find out who remained loyal. I walked into my own spa like a stranger who had forgotten her appointment. And nobody recognized the woman who had signed their paychecks for 15 years. The receptionist was new, young, sharp-eyed, already typing something into a computer system I had never approved. The logo behind her desk looked wrong. Same colors, same font, but the tagline had changed. Where it once read, Serenity Wellness, your journey to peace, it now simply said, Serenity Wellness, a family legacy. Family, Wade's word. His fingerprints were everywhere. Can I help you? The receptionist's smile was professional but empty. Oh dear. I fumbled with my purse, the confused old woman I had been practicing in the mirror. I could have sworn my massage was today. Isn't this the Coral Gables location? Mom. Wade emerged from the hallway that led to what used to be my office. His smile was patient, the kind reserved for children and the elderly. You must have gotten confused, he said. Your massage isn't until Thursday. Thursday. I blinked slowly. Everything looks different. Did you change the computers? We're modernizing. You don't need to worry about the details anymore. He took my arm, guiding me deeper into the space I had built from nothing. I let him. I let him show me around like a tourist in my own museum, while I cataloged every change with the precision of an accountant counting losses. How long does it take to erase 20 years? Apparently, less than a month if you work fast enough. The treatment rooms had new locks. The break room had a different coffee machine. The bulletin board where I used to post employee birthdays had been replaced with a digital screen showing productivity metrics. But the real devastation was human. I recognized only 3 faces among the staff, 3 out of 12. Maria, who had been with me since opening day, was gone. Thomas, who drove 45 minutes each way because he believed in what we built, was gone. Jennifer, who cried in my office when her mother died and came back to work 3 days later because she said this place felt like family, gone. Replaced with strangers who moved efficiently and never made eye contact. We had to make some staffing adjustments, Wade explained, misreading my silence. Streamlining operations. Nothing you need to worry about. Of course, dear, I patted his hand. You know best. The words tasted like ash in my mouth. My son guided me through my own spa like a tour guide in a museum, explaining artifacts I had created as though I were a confused tourist who had wandered in by accident. The new booking system is much more efficient, he said, and we've partnered with some corporate wellness programs, very lucrative. That sounds lovely, I smiled vacantly. Is Ramona here? She always makes my chamomile tea just right. A flicker crossed Wade's face. Too quick for most people to catch, but I was his mother. I had read his expression since before he could speak. Ramona Barton, who had managed this location for 15 years and knew where every secret was buried, was still here. And Wade was not entirely comfortable about it. She's in the back, he said. I'll have her bring you some tea before you go. You're so thoughtful. He parked me in the waiting area, in a chair I had personally selected 8 years ago, and disappeared to fetch his last remaining threat. I sat with my purse in my lap and waited. Ramona appeared 3 minutes later, carrying a teacup on a small tray. She was 52, with silver streaking her dark hair, and 15 years of loyalty in her careful movements. Her eyes met mine for exactly 1 second as she bent to set down the cup. That 1 second said everything. Your chamomile, Mrs. Ashford. Her voice was light, performative, just how you like it. Thank you, dear. You've always taken such good care of me. As I reached for the cup, her fingers brushed my palm. Something small and folded pressed against my skin. I closed my hand around it without looking down. Enjoy your tea, Ramona said, already turning away. I hope your real appointment on Thursday goes smoothly. She walked back toward the treatment rooms without a backward glance. A perfect performance. Wade, watching from down the hall, saw nothing but an old employee serving an older client. I finished my tea. I thanked my son for his patience with his confused mother. I let him walk me to my car with the same gentle condescension he had been practicing all morning. Then I drove 3 blocks, pulled into a parking structure, and unfolded the note with steady hands. The paper was warm from Ramona's palm. 5 words in her careful handwriting. 5 words that changed everything. Need to meet, tonight, urgent. Below them, an address, a small cafe in Coconut Grove where we had celebrated her daughter's recovery from surgery 3 years ago. She remembered. She knew I would remember too. Whatever Ramona Barton knew. She had been waiting for me to come looking. That evening, I would find out exactly how deep the rot had spread. Ramona was already seated in the back corner of Cafe Abraco when I arrived. Her phone face down on the table, like a loaded weapon waiting to be fired. I slid into the seat across from her. The cafe was nearly empty, just a few students with laptops and a couple sharing dessert near the window. Safe. Anonymous. Thank you for coming, Ramona said. Her hands were steady now, nothing like the trembling fingers that had pressed the note into my palm that morning. Tell me everything. She did. 4 employees fired in 2 months. Maria, Thomas, Jennifer, Daniel. All of them loyal to me. All of them replaced within a week by people Wade had recruited from a staffing agency in Tampa. The accounting software changed 3 weeks ago. No one except Wade and Kezia had access to the new system. He told us it was for efficiency, Ramona said. Modernization. But I've been managing spas for 15 years. I know what efficiency looks like. This was about hiding things. What things? Ramona picked up her phone, unlocked it, and pressed play. My son's voice filled the space between us. If you say one word to my mother, I will make sure you never work in this industry again. Do you understand me? I know people at every spa chain in Florida. One call, Ramona. That's all it takes. I listened without moving, without breathing. That was 3 weeks ago, Ramona said, after I asked about the payroll discrepancies. She played another recording, and another. My son threatening, my son lying, my son dismantling everything I had built with the casual confidence of someone who believed he could never be caught. I started recording him after the second threat, Ramona said. I knew this day would come. The audio stopped. The cafe felt impossibly quiet. You saved everything, I said finally. No, Ramona shook her head. I just waited for you to fight back. I took her hand across the table. Two women who had built something together, watching a man try to tear it down. There would be time for proper thanks later. For now, we had work to do. The next morning, I sat in Constance's office, watching her spread documents across her mahogany desk. She had worked through the night. The evidence of it showed in the coffee cups and the shadows under her eyes. Your ex-husband owes $2.1 million to 3 different casinos in Las Vegas, Constance said. Collection had escalated to legal threats. They were about to seize whatever assets they could find. That explains why he came back. It explains more than that. She slid a bank record toward me. 3 months ago, someone paid $800,000 toward his debt, enough to stop the immediate collection. Enough to buy time. How much does it cost to buy a father's loyalty? Apparently, $800,000 and the promise of more. Who paid it? A Delaware LLC called Ashford Holdings. The name alone should tell you something. Constance pulled out another document. I traced the registration. The LLC was formed 18 months ago. The registered agent is a corporate services firm, but the mailing address. She pointed to a line on the form. I recognized it immediately. It was Wade's home address. He bought his own father, I said. The words tasted like poison. He paid Vernon's debts and sent him after me with a lawsuit. The paper trail is clear. Constance spread the documents wider. Your son formed a shell company, used it to pay your ex-husband's gambling debts. Then Vernon conveniently shows up with a marital property claim timed perfectly with the restructuring papers. The paper trail led straight to Wade's front door, like breadcrumbs left by a child who never learned to cover his tracks. He's not that smart, I said. No, Constance met my eyes, which means someone is advising him. Someone who knows corporate law, financial manipulation, family court strategy. This is too sophisticated for Wade alone. I thought about Kezia's manicured nails tapping each signature line, about the legal language in those restructuring documents, about the precision timing of every attack. His wife, I said. Kezia. Possibly, but Kezia is a real estate agent with a psychology degree. She's manipulative, certainly, but she's not a financial architect. Constance leaned back. Someone else is pulling strings. Someone we haven't identified yet. Bank records, LLC filings, casino collection notices. The documents covered her desk like a map of my son's betrayal. Every piece of paper was another nail in a coffin Wade had been building for months, while I drank my morning coffee and trusted my Jeems. Children. But Constance was right. There was a shape in the shadows. Someone behind Wade and Kezia. Someone with the expertise to construct this elaborate trap. We have 4 days until Vernon's hearing, Constance said. 3 days until Wade's restructuring deadline. That's not much time to find a ghost. Then we work with what we have. I gathered the documents carefully. The recordings, the bank records, the LLC registration. We build our defense and watch for the ghost to reveal itself. Constance nodded. There's one more thing. Vernon's debt situation. The remaining balance. If someone offered to pay it all off right now, he might flip. He might tell us exactly who's orchestrating this. I thought about that. About the man who had left me 20 years ago. About whether desperation could buy honesty from someone who had sold everything else. That afternoon, I would make a call I had avoided for 8 years. I had not spoken to my firstborn daughter in 8 years, and now I was about to ask her to help me destroy my son. The call I had avoided since we argued about whether to tell Wade the truth. Sidoni wanted honesty. I wanted protection. Neither of us won. We both just stopped talking. I locked my study door, opened my laptop, and pressed the video call button before I could change my mind. She answered on the third ring. The woman on my screen had my eyes and my grandmother's cheekbones. Sidoni Caldwell, 39 years old, architect by training, the daughter I had kept secret for 4 decades. Born before I met Vernon, raised by my sister in Oregon, protected from the chaos of my life by distance and silence. Mom? Her voice was careful, guarded. 8 years will do that. Sidoni. I did not know where to begin. I know it's been 8 years. I know I have no right to ask, but I need you. She studied me through the screen. 2,000 miles between us, but I could feel her measuring every line on my face. You're in trouble, she said. Not a question. Yes. Wade. You knew. I suspected. She leaned back in her chair. I've been watching Serenity Wellness in the business news. Subtle things. Restructuring announcements that didn't sound like your voice. Executive changes that happened too fast. I almost called you 3 times. She had my eyes. After 39 years, I could still see myself in her face through a laptop screen 2,000 miles away. My daughter, my secret, the one person Wade did not know existed. Tell me everything, Sidoni said. I've been waiting. So I told her. The forged signature, Vernon's lawsuit, the restructuring deadline. The shell company Wade had used to buy his own father's cooperation. The recordings Ramona had collected. The hidden empire of SW Holdings that Wade was fighting to control without knowing it existed. Sidoni listened without interrupting. When I finished, she nodded once. When this is over, I said, I want to explain why I kept you secret. All of it. I know why, she said quietly. You were protecting me from him, from Vernon, from the whole mess. I was angry about it for years. But I understand now. And Wade, you were protecting him too. I failed at that part. No, Sidoni shook her head. He failed himself. Now tell me how I can help. The next morning, Wade arrived at my penthouse with fresh documents and the same patient smile he had been practicing since the restaurant. Mom, we need to add a few clauses to the restructuring papers. He spread new pages across my coffee table. Health protection provisions, just in case. Health protection clauses. As if they were protecting me from illness and not from my own freedom. I picked up the documents, squinting at them the way I had practiced. What does this mean, sweetheart? Medical decisions? If anything happens to your health, we can make decisions quickly. Hospital care, long-term facilities, all handled smoothly. That's so thoughtful. Kezia stood by the window, tapping at her phone. She glanced up and added, the facility in Boca we toured last week has excellent. She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes met Wade's. A fraction of a second, but I caught it. What facility, dear? I kept my voice light. Confused. Nothing, Mother. Wade's smile tightened. Kezia misspoke. We were just looking at options. In case you ever wanted assisted living. Luxury places. Oh, how thoughtful. They left 20 minutes later. Documents unsigned. I had played confused about the legal language, promising to read them carefully. Wade's jaw was tight when he kissed my cheek goodbye. The moment the elevator doors closed, I opened my laptop. Facility in Boca, toured last week. 15 minutes of searching, cross-referencing Kezia's social media check-ins. finding a review she had accidentally liked on a local business page. Sunset Palms Care Center. I clicked on the listing. $4,500 a month. I spent more than that on flowers for my penthouse. And this was where my son wanted me to die. 2 stars out of 5. State minimum staffing, shared rooms, a parking lot view. Reviews mentioning understaffing, medication errors, residents left in wheelchairs for hours. Not a luxury facility, not even a decent one. The cheapest option they could find that would still keep me alive long enough to sign over everything. I stared at the photographs. Fluorescent lighting, beige walls, a dining room that looked like a hospital cafeteria. This was where Wade and Kezia had toured while I was at home believing they loved me. They did not want to care for me. They wanted to warehouse me, store me somewhere cheap and compliant while they spent my money and lived in my properties and pretended I had simply faded away. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow I would go to the bank. I would confirm every detail of SW Holdings. I would make sure the empire they thought they were stealing was actually waiting to swallow them whole. $4,500 a month. That was what my life was worth to my son. He was about to learn what his betrayal was worth to me. The nursing home photographs haunted me all night. 2 stars. Shared rooms. State minimum staffing. By morning, my fury had crystallized into something colder and more useful. I drove to First Republic Private Banking with Ramona's intelligence and my original incorporation documents. Time to see exactly what my son had built with my money. The private banking suite smelled of leather chairs and old money. A nervous young banker named Marcus Whitfield met me in the lobby, his smile faltering when I mentioned SW Holdings. "I'm not sure I can help you with that account, ma'am. I'm the beneficial owner." I placed my incorporation documents on his desk. "Serenity Wellness, LLC. Check your records." His fingers trembled on the keyboard. Whatever he found made his face go pale. "Mrs. Ashford, I apologize. I didn't realize." "The files, please." He retrieved them. Thick folders, property deeds, investment statements, 12 years of financial records I had never seen. SW Holdings was not hiding thousands. It was hiding $8.7 million. Properties in Florida, Georgia, Alabama, a warehouse in Jacksonville, 2 strip malls outside Atlanta, a minority stake in a charter fishing company, all purchased with profits diverted from Serenity Wellness over 12 years. All invisible to me while I balanced budgets and scheduled staff and trusted my son to handle the taxes. "Let me handle the taxes, sweetheart," Wade had said when he first offered to help. "Numbers give you headaches." I photographed every page, every deed, every statement. My phone camera clicked mechanically while my heart pounded. "Mrs. Ashford?" Marcus leaned closer, lowering his voice. "Someone flagged this account for family protection monitoring. Whoever set it up gets notified of any access." "How long before they're notified?" 6 hours, maybe less. 6 hours. Then Wade would know I had found his shadow empire. I gathered the documents and stood. "Whoever set this up knew exactly what they were doing," Marcus said. "This isn't amateur hour." "No," I agreed, "but amateurs make mistakes eventually." I drove to Coral Gables as the sun set. Not to my spa's front door, but to the service entrance I had used when this building was nothing but a dream and 8,000 borrowed dollars. I still had my master key. Wade did not know that. The treatment rooms were dark, filled with the familiar scent of eucalyptus and lavender, products I had personally selected. Walls I had painted myself that first summer when I could not afford contractors. 30 years ago. I signed the lease on this building with a rubber-banded stack of cash from my savings. Now I was breaking into my own property like a thief. Wade's office was at the end of the hall, the one that used to be mine until he commandeered it after his restructuring began. I picked the lock with a bobby pin, a skill from my rough Chicago childhood that I had never mentioned to anyone. The desk drawer yielded to a paperclip. Inside, documents that stopped my breath. Power of attorney, dated 3 months ago. My signature at the bottom, granting Wade complete control over my financial and medical decisions. I had not signed this. I studied the forgery in the moonlight streaming through the plantation shutters. The light cast prison bar shadows across the paper. Fitting. The signature was nearly perfect. The same pressure points, the same spacing. But there, at the end of my name, was the tell I had hoped I would not find. The lowercase y looped twice. Wade's childhood habit. His third-grade teacher tried to correct it.
I told her to leave him alone. I found it endearing.
He had forged my signature himself, not a professional. My own son, practicing my name over and over, getting everything right except the one thing he could not change, because it was written into his muscle memory. I kept searching. Beneath the power of attorney was another document, an appointment confirmation. Pinecrest Behavioral Health, psychiatric evaluation. Patient Lorraine Ashford, date October 9th, 2025, time 2 p.m. Tomorrow. They were not just stealing my money, they were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. The nursing home. The health protection clauses, the power of attorney, it all connected. Once I was locked in that facility, Wade would have complete control. He could sign anything in my name, sell anything, drain everything. And I would be a confused old woman in a shared room with a parking lot view, unable to stop him. I photographed the documents, every page, every signature, every damning detail. In 48 hours, one of us would be in handcuffs. I was determined it would not be me. I slipped out of my own building like a ghost, the psychiatric appointment burning in my pocket. They wanted to lock me in a facility while they stole my life's work. They thought I was a confused old woman who could not find her reading glasses. They had one day left to believe that. So did I. Tomorrow, I would not go to that appointment as a patient. I would go as a woman with evidence, with recordings. With documents proving my son had forged my signature, with the same handwriting habit I had protected when he was 7 years old. The countdown had begun, and I knew exactly where to start. The coffee had gone cold 3 hours ago, but I could not stop staring at the lights of the city I had conquered and lost. I sat on my penthouse balcony at 2 a.m. The psychiatric evaluation papers waited under my phone, watching container ships move through Biscayne Bay like slow-motion metaphors for the life I had built. 4 floors below, Miami slept. 40 floors above, I could not. The evidence was photographed, the forgeries documented, the trap identified. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., my son expected me to walk into a psychiatric evaluation and emerge a ward of the state. But first, I needed to understand how I had gotten here. 20 years of 4 a.m. wake-ups. 20 years of choosing the business over sleep, over dates, over everything that made life worth living. I had missed Sidoni's school plays. I had missed her graduation. I had missed 39 years of her life because I was building something I thought would outlast me. And now my son was trying to steal it while my daughter had to learn my voice again through a video call. The signs had been there for years, the way Wade looked at my signature on checks. The questions about my retirement plans that started too early and came too often. The subtle suggestions that I was working too hard, that my memory was slipping, that maybe someone younger should handle the complicated parts. I saw them all. I chose blindness because admitting the truth meant admitting I had wasted my prime decades raising a fraud. How do you mourn a living man? How do you grieve someone who is standing right there, wearing your son's face, planning your destruction? The wind off the bay carried the scent of salt and night jasmine from my planters. I had chosen those plants myself. I had chosen everything in this penthouse myself. Every tile, every fixture, every inch of this life built from nothing but determination and a loan I should never have accepted. Mama gave me her burial fund, $8,000 she had saved for a decent casket and a headstone with her name spelled correctly. She pressed it into my hands the week before she died and said she would rather rot in a cardboard box than watch me waitress forever. I paid that money back tenfold. Built her a mausoleum in Oakwood Cemetery with marble floors and fresh flowers every week for 15 years. She never saw Serenity Wellness become an empire. She never saw me become someone who mattered. And Wade wanted to lock me in a facility with shared rooms and a parking lot view. I let myself feel it then. All of it. The weight of 42 years of marriage turned to ash. The weight of a son who had practiced my signature until he got the loops just right. The weight of a life spent building something beautiful, only to watch it rot from the inside. I cried. For 15 minutes, I let myself cry. For the husband who left and came back as a weapon. For the son who smiled while forging my name. For the years I could never recover and the trust I could never rebuild. Then I wiped my face with the back of my hand and poured the cold coffee over the railing. 40 floors down, it vanished into darkness. This was the last time I would cry for Wade Ashford. Tomorrow, I would bury him instead. The first light of dawn touched Biscayne Bay as I went inside. The Miami skyline turned from black to purple to pink, while I sat at my desk with a legal pad and began writing names. Everyone who had helped Wade, everyone who had looked the other way, every institution that had failed to notice a son systematically dismantling his mother's empire. The psychiatric appointment was at 2 p.m. By 1 p.m., I would have a counter strategy. They thought I would skip the appointment. Run, hide, prove their narrative of a confused old woman having a breakdown. They were wrong. I would attend the evaluation. I would answer every question calmly and correctly, and I would record everything on a device they would never find. Let them try to declare me incompetent while I documented their conspiracy in real time. They wanted a broken old woman. They were about to meet the one who had survived worse. I wrote the last name on my list and circled it 3 times. Not Wade, not Kezia, not even Vernon. The person who had referred me to Pinecrest Behavioral Health, whose signature was at the bottom of the evaluation order. Someone I had trusted for 15 years. Someone who had been in my home last Christmas, drinking my wine, laughing at my jokes, asking about my health with a concern I now understood was reconnaissance. Someone who had helped Wade set this trap from the inside. I stared at the name I had written, 3 letters circled in black ink on a yellow legal pad. A friend who was never a friend. A doctor who had violated every oath she ever took. Tomorrow, there would be no more sadness for unworthy people. Tomorrow, the war would begin in earnest. And I knew exactly where to start. The name on the referral had kept me awake all night. Dr. Margot Devereaux, my best friend for 15 years. The woman who had held my hand through my divorce negotiations and drunk wine on my balcony last Christmas. She had signed the order to have me evaluated for competency. But first, I have another traitor to handle. I slid the bank statements across the marble table and watched Vernon Prescott's tan drain to gray. We sat in a corner booth at Cafe Abraco, the same cafe where Ramona and I had met days earlier. The morning crowd was sparse. No one was paying attention to an elderly woman showing documents to a nervous man. "These are wire transfers," I said quietly, "from a Delaware LLC to 3 different casinos in Las Vegas. $127,000 over 2 years. Vernon stared at the papers. His coffee sat untouched. "He didn't save you out of friendship, Vernon. He bought you. There's a difference." "I thought..." Vernon's voice cracked. "I thought he was just being kind, helping me get back on my feet." Wade has never been kind. He's only ever been strategic. Vernon looked like a man watching his own autopsy, present for every cut, unable to stop a single one. "What did he ask you to do?" I already knew, but I needed to hear him say it. "Keep you company." Vernon could not meet my eyes. "Report back on your mental state. He said you were getting confused, forgetful. He said you needed help and wouldn't admit it. And you believed him." I wanted to believe him. Vernon finally looked up. Believing him meant I wasn't just a man who'd sold himself for gambling debts. It meant I was helping. "You were going to testify at the competency hearing, weren't you?" "Yes." The single word hung between us. "What do you need me to do?" Vernon asked. His voice was small now, defeated. "When the time comes, you tell the truth. Every word Wade told you to say, you say the opposite." You testify that I am sharp, competent, and completely aware of what my son is doing. And if I do that, then I don't send these bank statements to your ex-wife and her divorce attorney." Vernon nodded slowly, a man with no cards left to play. I left the cafe with Vernon's promise and his shame. Both would be useful. 3 hours later, Wade arrived at my penthouse unannounced. He let himself in with a key I had never given him, finding me in the living room with a cup of tea I had positioned carefully for effect. The confused old woman drinking tea, staring out the window. "Mom." He kissed my cheek. His cologne, once comforting, now made my stomach turn. "You look tired." "I haven't been sleeping well." That's what I wanted to talk about. He sat across from me, leaning forward with practiced concern. "The evaluation tomorrow. Doctor Devereaux is excellent, but I've arranged for a second physician to join her, for thoroughness." Wade smiled. The same smile from our wedding photos when he was the ring bearer. The same smile from the night he had first asked to handle my taxes. "A second physician," I repeated dully. "Just to make sure we get a complete picture. You understand." "I understand." "Good." He patted my hand the way you pat a dog that has finally learned to sit. "I've only ever wanted what's best for this family. You just can't see it anymore." I let my shoulders slump, let my voice tremble, let him see exactly what he expected to see. "You're right, Wade. Maybe I am too old for all this. Maybe some rest would help. That's all we want, Mom, for you to rest." He stayed another 20 minutes, outlining the evaluation process with the patience of a man explaining a complicated puzzle to a child. I nodded in all the right places. I let my hands shake when I reached for my tea. Here is what 42 years of marriage teaches you how to lose on purpose. Wade left satisfied. The door clicked shut behind him. I counted to 60, listening for the elevator. Then my spine straightened. My hands stopped shaking. I pulled out my phone and checked the recording app. Every word, crystal clear. A proper facility. What's best for this family. You just can't see it anymore. Patronizing. Threatening. Incriminating. I replayed the conversation, listening for the detail I needed. It came at minute 7. "Dr. Devereaux recommended the evaluation personally," Wade had said. "She's concerned about you. She noticed things at Christmas." At Christmas, when Margot had sat on my balcony drinking wine, when she had asked about my memory, my sleep, my stress levels, when I had thought she was being a caring friend. Dr. Margot Devereaux, psychiatrist, my best friend for 15 years. The woman who had referred me for a competency evaluation so my son could steal my empire. I stared at my phone. The recording was evidence. The betrayal was personal. Tomorrow, I would walk into that evaluation room. I would face 2 physicians armed with questions designed to make me fail, and one of them would be a woman I had trusted with my secrets, my fears, my vulnerabilities. She had used all of it against me. She would not get the chance to use anything more. I spent the morning processing Margot's betrayal, then called Constance. She had found something that could change everything. Judge Constance Thornton slid the manila folder across her desk like it contained a live grenade. "I kept the original of every sealed record I ever signed," she said. "Old habit from my prosecutor days. Most judges destroy them. I file them." I opened the folder. Inside was a conviction record from Broward County. 8 years old. The defendant's name made my heart stop. Kezia Ashford. Embezzlement, Constance said. $43,000 from her employer before she married Wade. She pled down to avoid prison. The record was sealed as part of the deal. I stared at the document. My daughter-in-law. The woman with the manicured nails who had tapped each signature line had a fraud conviction? She had stolen from an employer and walked away with nothing but a sealed file. Kezia doesn't know this exists. Constance continued. She thinks sealed means destroyed. Why are you showing me this? Constance dealt in secrets like a banker deals in bonds, always calculating the interest. Because Wade picked the wrong ally, she said. Kezia will turn on him the moment she smells a sinking ship. Right now, she thinks she's backing a winner. Show her the sealed record, and she'll know the ship is already underwater. And what do you want in return? Nothing on paper. Constance leaned back. Just remember who helped when no one else would. I've seen 100 Wades in my courtroom. They always overplay their hand. I took the folder, another weapon for my arsenal. Another betrayal to process later. That evening, Wade hosted a reconciliation dinner at the most expensive steakhouse in Miami. White tablecloths, sommelier hovering. The performance of a loving son bringing his family together. I arrived playing fragile. Wade pulled out my chair. Kezia complimented my dress with the sincerity of a snake complimenting a mouse. "I'm so glad we can all be together," Wade said, raising his glass. "Family is everything." How do you eat filet mignon across from the people planning to lock you in a psychiatric ward? You chew slowly. You smile. You let them think they have already won. Vernon sat at the end of the table, avoiding everyone's eyes. He had not spoken to Wade since our cafe meeting. He was playing his role, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. "Mother, you look tired," Kezia said. "Are you sleeping enough?" "I have been having trouble lately." I let my voice waver. So many things to worry about. "That's exactly why we've arranged some help," Wade said smoothly. "After tomorrow's evaluation, you won't have to worry about anything anymore." I nodded meekly. Let them see what they expected to see. The dinner dragged on through appetizers and entrees. Through Wade's stories about expanding the spa business and Kezia's suggestions about my health. Every word was a knife wrapped in silk. Every smile was a mask over contempt. Then came the toast. Wade raised his glass again. To family, to new beginnings, to taking care of each other. I lifted my wine, across the table. Vernon's eyes met mine for half a second, an almost imperceptible nod. Confirmation. He was still mine. Vernon's nod lasted half a second. It was enough. To family, I echoed, letting my voice tremble. May we all get exactly what we deserve. They saw a broken woman raising her glass. I saw 4 people who had no idea what was coming. The dinner ended with air kisses and promises to meet after tomorrow's evaluation. Wade helped me to the valet circle, playing the dutiful son for anyone who might be watching. Then Kezia stepped close. Her perfume was cloying, expensive, suffocating. She leaned in as if to embrace me, her lips brushing my ear. "I know about Sidoni, Mother." My blood turned to ice. "Did you think I wouldn't find out about your little secret in Paris?" She pulled back with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. "Your hidden daughter, your backup plan. Don't worry, I haven't told Wade yet." But I wonder what he would think, knowing his mother has been lying to him his entire life. I could not move, could not breathe. "Sleep well, Mother." Kezia's smile widened. "Tomorrow is going to be a big day." She walked to her car without looking back. Wade waved cheerfully from the driver's seat, oblivious to what his wife had just done. I stood in the valet circle as their taillights disappeared. The Miami night was warm. My hands were cold. Kezia knew about Sidoni, about the daughter I had hidden for 39 years, about the secret I had kept even from Vernon, even from Wade, even from everyone except Constance. How had she found out? Who had told her? And what was she planning to do with the information? The psychiatric evaluation was tomorrow at 2 p.m. Margot would be there. Now Kezia had leverage I had never anticipated. I had weapons, recordings, documents, a flipped ex-husband, a sealed fraud conviction. But Kezia had my secret, and she was waiting to see which of us would blink first. Kezia's threat about Sidoni echoed in my mind as I drove home from the dinner. She thought she had found my weakness. She had found my strength. By morning, she would understand the difference. I spread 2 identical contracts across my dining table at midnight. One that would save me, one that would destroy everything. Constance arrived at 11 with a briefcase full of legal templates and a thermos of black coffee. We worked until 2 a.m. crafting decoy contracts identical to Wade's restructuring documents. Same fonts, same page count, same signature lines. The difference was buried in paragraph 14, subsection C. Upon any legal dispute concerning ownership of assets described herein, Constance read aloud, all disputed properties transfer automatically to SW Holdings LLC pending resolution. They'll never read past paragraph 3, I said. That's the beauty of legal boilerplate. It looks like standard language. It is standard language, just arranged differently. We built the trap one clause at a time. Each paragraph, another bar in the cage they would walk into willingly. About Kezia's threat, Constance said as we proofread the final draft. Sidoni, your hidden daughter. How worried should I be? I set down my coffee cup. Sidoni is the one good thing I hid from this family. A daughter from a brief relationship before Vernon. My sister raised her in Oregon while I built the business. And Kezia found out. Kezia thinks she found leverage. I smiled grimly. She found the opposite. I'm no longer ashamed of Sidoni. I'm proud of her. And by tomorrow, Kezia will have much bigger problems than my 39-year-old secret. Constance nodded. Then let's give her those problems. The morning meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. at the Coral Gables Spa, Wade's choice. He wanted to sign the restructuring papers on his newly conquered territory. I arrived at 9:30 with the decoy contracts in my purse. Wade's lawyer, Harold Finch, a middle-aged man whose confidence far exceeded his attention to detail, was already setting up at the conference table. He barely glanced at me. Mrs. Ashford, you're early. Old habits, I smiled. I built this company by arriving first. I set my purse on the table and waited. When Harold turned to arrange his papers, I switched the contract stacks with a movement so smooth it might have been invisible. His documents went into my purse. My documents took their place. Wade arrived at exactly 10, Kezia trailing behind him like a shadow. He kissed my cheek. Mom, ready to make this official? I suppose I have no choice. Harold spread the contracts across the table. Standard format, sign on the marked pages. Wade signed without reading a single word. His pen moved in quick, dismissive strokes. 42 years of marriage, and he still underestimated me. Let's get this over with, he said. I have a tea time at noon. Kezia signed as witness, her manicured nail tapping each line just as she had at our first meeting. She caught my eye and smiled. The smile that said she still held the Sidoni card. The smile that said she thought she had won. Finally, she said, this has dragged on long enough. I signed last. My real signature, my real name, on documents they had never actually read. When the ink dried, I gathered both copies. I'll take the original, Wade said, reaching across the table. I'll keep it, dear. I pressed the contract against my chest. You know I like having things in writing. Wade shrugged. Suit yourself. You'll have plenty of time to read it at Pinecrest. His laugh was the laugh of a man who believed he had everything. He did not know he had just signed away the hidden empire. The properties in 3 states. The shell company that controlled everything. By triggering a legal dispute, he had activated the clause that transferred all disputed assets to SW Holdings. And SW Holdings belonged to me. They thought I was signing my surrender. I was signing their eviction notice. I walked to my car with the contract pressed against my chest like a newborn. Victory. Complete and total victory, waiting to be revealed at the moment of my choosing. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mrs. Ashford, this is Dr. Margot Devereaux. We need to talk before tomorrow's evaluation. It's not what you think. Please. I stared at the message. Margot, my former best friend. The woman who had signed the referral that could lock me away. Now she wanted to talk. My finger hovered over delete. This could be another trap. Wade could have orchestrated it. Margot could be trying to gather evidence of my mental state, recording me without consent. Or she had discovered something. Or Wade had threatened her too. Or she had looked in the mirror and seen what she had become. I saved the number without responding. Tomorrow's evaluation was in 14 hours. I had contracts signed, I had recordings made, I had Vernon ready to flip. Did I need Margot? Did I trust her? I put the phone in my purse next to the contract that would destroy my son. Tomorrow would answer all questions. I did not respond to Margot's text. Not yet. First, I needed to understand exactly what I was fighting for. I drove to the Southwest Holdings office where Constance was waiting with a whiteboard and a revelation. How do you diagram $85 million in stolen dreams on a single whiteboard? Constance drew lines connecting boxes, shell companies, property holdings, investment accounts. Each connection led back to a single node at the center, SW Holdings, LLC. They're fighting over crumbs, Constance said, while you own the bakery. I stared at the diagram. The Serenity Wellness chain. The 12 spas I had built with my own hands represented only $12 million. 14% of the total. The rest was hidden. Properties in 3 states, investment portfolios, minority stakes in businesses I had never heard of. All purchased over 18 years with money diverted from my company. Wade moved $85 million out of our marriage, I said. Over how many years? 18. He started 6 months after your first franchise opened. 18 years. I did the math. That was 6 months after we opened the Coral Gables location. He had started stealing before the paint was dry. Every vacation we could not afford, every expansion I delayed because of cash flow problems. Every time I stayed late balancing budgets while Wade golfed with clients. All of it was a lie. He had been robbing me while I cooked his dinner. The signed contracts from this morning, Constance said. They give you control of all of it. Wade just doesn't know yet. I traced the lines on the whiteboard with my finger. $85 million. 18 years of theft. And my son thought he was stealing a wellness company. He had no idea what he had actually signed away. 3 hours later, I met Vernon in a parking lot near the courthouse. He was pacing beside his rental car, visibly nervous. I withdrew the lawsuit, he said before I could speak. This morning, through back channels. Wade doesn't know yet. Why? Vernon could not meet my eyes. Because I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize what was looking back. What does it cost to buy a man's conscience? Apparently $500,000 and a gambling debt. There's more. Vernon pulled out his phone. Wade promised me money, a lot of money, after you were committed. He handed me the phone. Text messages filled the screen. $500,000 after procedures completed, Wade had written. Document her episodes. The more confusion you can report, the faster this goes. Another message. Keep her talking. Get her to repeat herself. The evaluation needs ammunition. Another, Margot says we need 3 documented incidents. Give me 3 and the money is yours. Margot. There was her name again, my former best friend, confirming what I already suspected. You understand if Wade finds out, he'll destroy you, I said. He already did. Vernon's voice cracked. He just didn't know I'd notice. I was so desperate for the money, I convinced myself I was helping you, that you really were confused, that the facility would be good for you. And now I see what I let myself become. Vernon handed me his phone like a man handing over his own execution order. 20 years late, he said, but I'm trying. I scrolled through the messages, page after page of my son coordinating my destruction with my ex-husband. Dollar amounts, timelines, instructions for how to make me appear incompetent. Then I found another thread. The contact was saved only as MD. The initials I had been dreading since Margot's text arrived. Patient shows classic signs, the message read. Evaluation will confirm. You'll have guardianship by Friday. Wade's reply, and the second physician, arranged. Dr. Harmon owes me a favor. 2 signatures, no appeal. Wade, beautiful. After this, drinks at the club to celebrate. MD, make it dinner. I prefer champagne. I lowered the phone. The parking lot felt like it was spinning. Traffic noise faded to a dull roar. Dr. Margot Devereaux was not just my friend who had betrayed me. She was the architect. She had arranged the second physician. She had promised Wade guardianship by Friday. She had done all of it while texting me yesterday, pretending she wanted to explain. Her text had not been an olive branch. It had been reconnaissance. She was checking whether I suspected her. I handed the phone back to Vernon. "I need copies of everything," I said. My voice was steady. My hands were not. "Already done." He pulled out a flash drive. Every text, every voicemail Wade left me, every email about the plan. I took the drive. Evidence, proof, ammunition. Tomorrow's psychiatric evaluation was still scheduled for 2 p.m. Margot would be there. The second physician she had bribed would be there. They expected a confused old woman who would fail their tests and sign whatever they put in front of her. They would not get what they expected. "Go somewhere safe," I told Vernon. "Do not answer Wade's calls. Do not go anywhere he might look for you. And you. I'm going to destroy everything they built." Vernon nodded once. Then he got in his car and drove away. I stood alone in the parking lot, flash drive in my pocket, rage in my heart. Tomorrow would be the last day my son thought he could control me. The flash drive from Vernon contained more than text messages. It contained peace of mind. I knew now exactly who my enemies were and what they had planned. The only question remaining was how they would react when their plans began to crumble. I did not have to wait long to find out. Vernon's withdrawal of the lawsuit hit the court system at 4:15 p.m. By 4:30, my phone buzzed with a notification I had been waiting for. Constance had set up alerts on all filings related to my name. The marital property lawsuit was officially withdrawn. 15 minutes later, Vernon called me from his hotel room. "Wade just left me 6 voicemails," he said, "each one angrier than the last. He's panicking." "Good, let him panic." He called me a gambling-addicted old fool, among other things. Vernon's voice was tired. "He's not wrong about the gambling part. What else?" "He's at Kezia's place now. I can hear them through the phone when he calls. They're arguing." Vernon's phone went straight to voicemail now. The old man was either dead or hiding. Wade was not sure which he preferred. I imagined my son on the shoulder of I-95, staring at his phone, watching his carefully constructed conspiracy develop its first crack. The lawsuit had been his insurance policy, a backup plan in case the psychiatric evaluation failed. Now it was gone, and he had no idea how it happened. "What are they saying?" I asked Vernon. "Kezia thinks you're playing them. She said you were too calm at dinner. She noticed I wasn't making eye contact." He paused. "She's smarter than Wade gives her credit for. She always was. Wade doesn't want to hear it. He keeps saying you're just an old woman, that the evaluation tomorrow will prove everything he needs." When had my son decided I was stupid? When had the boy I raised decided his mother was nothing more than an obstacle to remove? The phone line crackled as Vernon shifted position. Kezia tried to warn him. "She said you built a $40 million company from nothing, that you're not someone to underestimate." And Wade. "He said you're emotional. That emotion is your weakness." I smiled. My son thought he knew me. He had watched me cry at commercials and assumed that meant I could not calculate. He had seen me grieve his father's departure and assumed that meant I could not strategize. Wade Ashford had never lost at anything that mattered. He was not about to start now. At least, that was what he believed. "There's one more thing," Vernon said. "Margot called him about 10 minutes ago. I could hear her through the speaker." "What did she say?" "The evaluation is still on for tomorrow, 2 o'clock. She sounded confident. Wade sounded relieved. Margot, my former best friend, the architect of my imprisonment. She was still proceeding as if nothing had changed. Either she did not know Vernon had flipped, or she did not care. Either way, she was walking into my trap. "Vernon, I need you to stay hidden until tomorrow afternoon. Don't answer any calls from Wade or Kezia. Don't go anywhere. They might look for you." "What happens tomorrow afternoon?" "Tomorrow afternoon, everything changes." I hung up and sat in the silence of my penthouse. Outside, the Miami skyline glittered with lights from buildings I had watched rise over 30 years. I had come to this city with nothing. I had built something from nothing, and now my own children wanted to take it all away. The psychiatric evaluation was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Pinecrest Behavioral Health. Margot would be there. The second physician she had bribed would be there. Wade and Kezia would be watching through whatever monitoring system they had arranged. They expected a confused old woman who would fail their tests. They would get something very different. I pulled out the documents I had prepared with Constance. The recording device disguised as a brooch. The copies of Vernon's text messages. The signed contracts that transferred everything to SW Holdings the moment Wade triggered a legal dispute. Tomorrow, I would walk into that evaluation room with evidence of their conspiracy hidden in my purse. I would answer every question calmly and correctly. I would let them believe I was falling into their trap. And then I would spring my own. My phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. I checked the message. It was from Kezia. I know what you're doing, Mother. I know about Constance. I know about Vernon. And I still have Sidonie. A threat. Desperate and clumsy, but a threat nonetheless. I typed my reply carefully. Then you should also know that I have your sealed fraud conviction, the one you thought was destroyed. See you at the evaluation, dear. I pressed send. Let Kezia spend the night wondering how I knew. Let her tell Wade. Let them panic together while I slept peacefully, knowing that every move they made only tightened the trap around them. Tomorrow at 2 p.m., my son would learn that his mother was not just an old woman. She was the woman who had built an empire while he was practicing how to forge her signature, and she was done pretending to be confused. Kezia never responded to my text about the fraud conviction. Her silence told me everything. She was regrouping. Let her regroup. By morning, I would have reinforcements she could never have anticipated. I had not seen my daughter in 3 years. And now she was walking toward me through Miami International with the same determined stride I had at 30. Sidonie emerged from the arrivals gate wearing a simple black dress and carrying a leather overnight bag. Her eyes found mine instantly. My eyes, my grandmother's cheekbones. 39 years of secrets compressed into a single embrace. You look good, Mom, she said into my shoulder. Tired, but good. You came. I wasn't sure you would. You said you needed me. She pulled back to look at my face. That's never happened before. 3 years since I had held my daughter. 3 decades since I had kept her secret. In 5 minutes, she had agreed to burn it all down for me. We drove to Brickell through the Miami night. I told her everything. Wade's conspiracy, the psychiatric evaluation, the hidden empire worth tens of millions, Vernon's defection, Margot's betrayal. Every piece of the puzzle I had assembled over the past week. Sidonie listened without interruption. Her architect's mind processed the information like blueprints for a building she would have to demolish. Tomorrow morning, I said as we pulled into my building's garage.
A psychiatrist will try to declare me incompetent.
If she succeeds, Wade gets everything. What do you need me to do? Be there. When the time comes, stand up and say your name. Sidonie nodded once. No hesitation. No questions about consequences. Wade doesn't know you exist, I continued. Neither does Kezia. When you appear, their entire narrative collapses. A secret daughter proves I've been protecting my family for decades, not losing my mind. And if they challenge me, let them. You have birth certificates, immigration records, a successful architecture practice in Paris. You're the most competent witness to my competence. The next morning, Margot arrived at 8 a.m. Dr. Margot Devereaux, 53 years old, had been my closest friend for 15 years. We had shared holidays, secrets, heartbreaks. Now she stood in my living room with a clipboard and a purpose I was supposed to fail. Good morning, Lorraine. Her professional smile did not reach her eyes. How are you feeling today? Perfectly well, thank you. Can you tell me today's date and the current president? October 12th, 2025. I held her gaze. And you know exactly who the president is. Margot, this is a formal evaluation. Mrs. Ashford, her voice tightened. Please answer directly. Margot asked her questions like a hunter setting snares. She did not notice she was walking into one herself. She asked me to remember 3 words and repeat them later. I remembered 5. She asked me to count backward from 100 by 7s. I made it to 2 without error. She asked me about my finances, my daily routine, my medication schedule. Every answer was precise. Every answer was documented. Every answer was being recorded by the device hidden in my brooch. "Let's try something different," Margot said, frustration creeping into her voice. "Tell me about your daughter." "Which one?" Her pen stopped moving. "You have one daughter-in-law, Lorraine. Kezia." "I have 2 daughters." I smiled. "Would you like to meet the other one?" Constance emerged from the bedroom where she had been monitoring everything. Behind her walked Sidonie. Margot's face went white. "Dr. Devereaux," Constance said calmly, "I believe you asked 3 questions designed to confuse rather than evaluate. I have recordings of each one. This is entrapment." "This is evidence." I stood. "Now choose. Margot, your medical license or your signature on that report." The pen hovered over the signature line. Then Margot's hands started shaking. She looked at Constance, at Sidonie, at the recording device now visible on my chest. Her career versus Wade's money. 15 years of friendship versus whatever he had promised her. "I can't sign this report," she said finally. "I know. Now we need to talk about what you're going to do next." Margot set down the unsigned report. When she looked at me again, I saw something I had not expected. Relief. "There's more you need to know," she said quietly. "I should have told you sooner. I wanted to, but I was scared." "Tell me now." "Wade didn't just want you committed." Margot's voice dropped to a whisper. "He wants you dead." "He talked about it on the phone with someone, called it the contingency plan if the evaluation failed." The room went silent. "I have proof," Margot continued. "Recordings of his calls, names, account numbers. He hired someone. Lorraine, a professional. The plan is to make it look like an accident after you're declared incompetent." "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm not a murderer." Tears streamed down her face. "I agreed to a biased evaluation for money. I didn't agree to help kill my best friend." Sidonie stepped forward, her face hard. "Who did he hire?" Margot wiped her eyes. "Someone named Harmon. Dr. Daniel Harmon, the second physician who was supposed to confirm my evaluation. He's not just a doctor, he's a fixer." I looked at Constance. She was already writing down the name. My son had not just tried to steal my empire. He had tried to arrange my murder. And now I had proof. Wade's phone buzzed at 7:47 a.m., 13 minutes before he was supposed to meet Dr. Margot Bellamy in the courthouse parking garage. I watched Vernon's face as he read the intercepted message aloud. "Cannot proceed with testimony. Ethical concerns have emerged. Do not contact me again. That's it." My coffee went cold. She's abandoning him. 13 minutes before showtime. Vernon scrolled through our surveillance feed. He's in the elevator. Hasn't seen it yet. Wade had built his entire competency case around Margot's psychiatric evaluation, the one claiming I suffered from delusional, financial paranoia. Without her testimony, he had nothing but accusations and a forged power of attorney our forensic team had already flagged. "There," Vernon said. "He's checking his phone." I leaned toward the laptop, watching parking garage footage. Wade stood frozen beside his Mercedes, thumb hovering over the screen. Even from the grainy angle, I saw his posture collapse. "Calling her," Vernon narrated. "Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. Third attempt." She blocked him. Wade's arm drew back. For a moment, I thought he'd hurl the phone against concrete. Instead, he pressed it to his forehead, breathing. 23 years of building something together. 23 years of watching him transform from the nervous business student I'd married into this creature, this thing that hired. Psychiatrists to declare me incompetent, and assassins to ensure I never recovered. Margot's revelation about Dr. Daniel Harmon had arrived 6 hours ago. Wade hadn't just wanted control of Ashford Wellness. He'd wanted me eliminated entirely. "Movement," Vernon said. "He's heading inside anyway." without his expert witness. Pride, sunk cost. Vernon switched feeds. He thinks he can charm his way through. I knew that walk. Wade moved through the courthouse lobby like he owned the marble, shoulders back, chin lifted. That smile he deployed when reality wasn't cooperating. Kezia's inside, Vernon added. Hallway outside courtroom 3B. How does she look? Nervous. I don't think she knows what Wade hired Harmon to do. That tracked. Kezia handled logistics, scheduling fraudulent board meetings, filing falsified documents. But murder for hire existed in a different category. Wade would have compartmentalized that away from anyone who might develop moral objections. She's standing, Vernon said. Wade just came around the corner. The confrontation happened fast. Wade grabbed Kezia's elbow, pulling her toward an alcove near the water fountains. His lips moved rapidly. I couldn't hear audio, but the body language screamed panic. Kezia's expression shifted from confusion to alarm to genuine fear. She didn't know, I murmured. Whatever he's telling her, she's hearing it for the first time. That tracks. No communication between Kezia and Harmon at any point. Wade kept the murder arrangements siloed. Murder arrangements. The phrase sat in my stomach like broken glass. My husband had arranged my murder, selected a professional, negotiated terms and methods. Now, before I tell you what happened when those courtroom doors opened, I need you to understand something. What Kezia was about to discover would shatter every assumption she'd built her career around. If you're still here after everything I've revealed, drop a comment telling me the most shocking betrayal you've ever witnessed. Not experienced, witnessed. And obviously, these events involve alleged criminal activity under investigation. Names and details have been modified. Back to that hallway. Kezia pulled away from Wade's grip, her face cycling through emotions I recognized from my own mirror 6 months ago. Denial. Calculation. The desperate search for an explanation that didn't require rebuilding your understanding of someone you trusted. She's looking at the courtroom doors, Vernon said. I watched her gaze drift past Wade toward courtroom 3B. The brass nameplate gleamed under fluorescent lights. She squinted, reading. Then her entire body went rigid. What's she seeing? Vernon zoomed the feed. Honorable Constance Thornton, presiding. Oh, Vernon breathed. That's unfortunate. Who's Constance Thornton? The judge who sealed Kezia's fraud conviction 11 years ago, gave her a second chance instead of prison. His voice carried dark amusement. Kezia embezzled from her previous employer. Thornton showed mercy on condition of restitution and a sealed record. If Kezia testifies and Thornton recognizes her, her sealed conviction becomes relevant. Worse, Thornton prohibited Kezia from financial decision-making as probation terms. If she's been handling Ashford wellness accounts this whole time, Kezia's face had gone paper white. She knew. Every escape route led to the same conclusion. Judge Thornton remembered every defendant she'd shown mercy, and she remembered what happened to those who squandered it. The courtroom doors swung open. A bailiff announced something inaudible. Wade straightened his tie and walked toward those doors like a man approaching coronation. He had no idea he was walking into his execution. Kezia watched him go, then turned and walked very quickly in the opposite direction. The doors closed behind my husband, somewhere inside. Judge Thornton was about to discover what Wade had been doing with my money, my company, my life. But what happened next would make everything before look like a minor accounting error. Because SW Holdings wasn't just hiding $85 million in stolen assets. It was hiding something far worse. Harold Finch held up the contract like a trophy, completely unaware he was displaying the instrument of his client's destruction. I sat at the respondent's table, hands folded, watching Wade's lawyer present the document he believed would end my legal challenge forever. The courtroom air tasted stale, recycled through vents that hadn't been serviced since the Reagan administration. Judge Victoria Hargrove, a 63-year-old Miami-Dade family court veteran known for her meticulous document review, peered over wire-rimmed glasses at the proceedings with the patience of someone who'd seen every variety of courtroom theater. Your Honor, this contract signed by all parties clearly establishes that my client's mother voluntarily transferred controlling interest in Ashford Wellness to SW Holdings, LLC. Harold's voice carried the confident rhythm of a man who'd already counted his billable hours. The respondent's claims of fraud are contradicted by her own signature. Wade sat at the petitioner's table, posture radiating the smugness I'd watched him perfect over 4 decades. He hadn't noticed Kezia's absence, hadn't wondered why his administrative right hand had fled the building 20 minutes earlier. His arrogance had always been selective. "I'll examine the document myself, counsel." Judge Hargrove extended her hand. Harold approached the bench with the contract, spine straight, shoes clicking against marble worn smooth by decades of desperate litigants. He had no idea what he was handing over. I watched the judge flip through pages. Her expression remained neutral through sections 1 through 6, standard asset transfer language, liability clauses, signature blocks. Then she reached page 14. Her eyebrow rose exactly 3 millimeters. In courtroom language, that was equivalent to a gasp. "Mr. Finch." Her voice dropped half an octave. Clause 7.3. Harold's confidence evaporated like morning fog as Judge Hargrove began reading aloud. The landmine Wade had signed with his own hand was about to detonate. Upon any legal dispute, challenge, or litigation regarding the assets described herein, ownership of said assets shall transfer automatically and irrevocably to SW Holdings, LLC, to be held in trust for the benefit of Lorraine Ashford. The judge looked up. "Did you review this clause with your client before he signed?" Harold turned toward Wade, color draining from his face like water from a cracked vessel. "Your Honor, let me see that. You submitted this document as evidence, counsel. Are you now unfamiliar with its contents?" Harold practically lunged for the contract. His eyes scanned page 14 with the desperate speed of a man watching his case implode in real time. When he turned to Wade, his expression had shifted from confidence to barely concealed horror. Wade grabbed the contract from his lawyer's hands. "How do you accuse someone of forgery when the signature is unmistakably yours?" I watched my son's face as that question crashed through his consciousness. His fingers trembled against the paper. His signature sat at the bottom of page 14, bold and unmistakable. Beside it, Kezia's witness signature confirmed the document's authenticity. "This clause wasn't in the original," Wade said. "This is different." "You told me you reviewed every page." Harold's whisper carried across the silent courtroom. "I did review it," Wade stood, chair scraping against marble with a sound like tearing fabric. "This is forgery." She switched the documents. Judge Hargrove's gavel struck once. "Mr. Ashford, you will remain seated and address the court with appropriate decorum." "Your Honor, she forged this contract." Wade's voice had climbed an octave, desperation replacing the smugness that had defined him moments ago. "I demand a handwriting analysis." "Are you claiming this isn't your signature?" Wade's mouth opened, closed. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. He couldn't deny the signature without admitting he'd signed something without reading it. "The signature is mine," he finally managed, "but the document isn't." In the gallery, Constance Thornton caught my eye. Her smile was barely perceptible. The expression of a woman who'd spent 11 years waiting to see certain people receive consequences. "Mrs. Ashford," Judge Hargrove turned to me, "the petitioner has accused you of document forgery. How do you respond?" I stood, smoothed my jacket, let the silence stretch for exactly 3 heartbeats. "My son signed this document voluntarily, Your Honor, in my presence, with his own lawyer present." I gestured toward Harold, whose face had achieved a shade of gray I'd previously only seen on hospital patients. I kept the original, as I always do with important contracts. And the clause in question, 42 years of marriage, and Wade had never once read what I put in front of him. That arrogance was always going to be his downfall. Was there from the beginning. He simply didn't read what he signed. Wade slumped back in his chair. His lawyer wouldn't look at him. The assets he'd spent 18 months stealing had just reverted to my control through a clause he'd signed himself, witnessed by his own accomplice. But I wasn't finished. I turned to Judge Hargrove and spoke the words I've been waiting 3 weeks to deliver. Your Honor, I have additional evidence to present. Evidence of a conspiracy to have me declared mentally incompetent. I paused, letting the courtroom absorb the first blow before delivering the second. And evidence of a murder-for-hire plot against my life, orchestrated by my son. The courtroom fell silent after my announcement. Murder for hire. The words hung in the recycled air like smoke from a detonation. Judge Hargrove recovered first. Mrs. Ashford, those are serious allegations. Do you have evidence to support them? I do, Your Honor. I'd like to call my first witness. Ramona Barton walked to the witness stand with the confidence of a woman who had been waiting years to tell the truth. At 47, she'd spent 12 of those years as Wade's executive assistant, scheduling his meetings, managing his calendar, and apparently recording his crimes. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back severely, and her navy suit projected exactly the professional credibility we needed. The bailiff swore her in. Ramona placed her hand on the Bible without trembling. Ms. Barton, I began, how long have you worked for my son? 12 years this November. Her voice carried clearly. I started when he took over operations at Ashford Wellness. And when did you begin recording your conversations with him? Harold Finch shot to his feet. Objection, Florida is a two-party consent state. Any recordings obtained without Mr. Ashford's knowledge are inadmissible. Judge Hargrove turned to Ramona. Ms. Barton, I started recording 3 months ago when Mr. Ashford threatened to blacklist me if I didn't falsify expense reports. Ramona produced her phone from her jacket pocket. Florida law exempts recordings made to document criminal threats. I have 17 recordings. All of them capture Mr. Ashford discussing illegal activities. Overruled. Judge Hargrove nodded toward the court recorder. The recordings may be entered into evidence. The first recording played through the courtroom speakers. Wade's voice, unmistakable, arrogant, threatening, filled the space between the wood-paneled walls. If you breathe a word to my mother, I'll make sure you're unemployable in this city. Every spa, every wellness center, every clinic in Miami will know you're toxic. Wade sat frozen at the petitioner's table. His lawyer had stopped objecting. The second recording was worse. Once she's in Pinecrest, we can discuss more permanent solutions. The woman's 61 years old. Accidents happen in those facilities. Permanent solutions. My son's voice. Discussing my death. Echoing through a courtroom. Some words you can never unhear. I watched Wade's face as his own voice condemned him. The smugness had evaporated completely now, replaced by something I'd never seen on him before. Genuine fear. He understood finally that the recordings couldn't be explained away, that his careful plans had been captured in his own words. Mr. Ashford? Judge Hargrove's voice cut through the silence. Do you deny this is your voice? Wade's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Your Honor, these recordings lack context, Harold began. The context appears to be your client threatening an employee and discussing harm to his mother. Judge Hargrove's tone could have frozen the Miami harbor. Please sit down. Mr. Finch? Harold sat. The defense table had become an island of desperate silence in a sea of damning evidence. Kezia shifted in her seat behind her brother. She'd returned to the courtroom after her initial flight drawn back. Perhaps by the same arrogance that infected her brother. The belief that her sealed past would remain sealed. She was wrong. Constance Thornton rose from the gallery and approached the bench. She moved like a surgeon approaching an operating table, precise, unhurried, about to cut deep. Your Honor, I'm Judge Constance Thornton, retired from the 11th Circuit. 8 years ago, I presided over a fraud case involving the petitioner's sister. Kezia's face went pale. That record was sealed. You can't... I sealed it. Constance's voice carried the authority of 30 years on the bench. I also retained the original file, as was my right under judicial discretion. Given the circumstances of this case, I believe it's relevant to the court's evaluation of witness credibility. She handed the manila folder to Judge Hargrove. The silence stretched as Hargrove reviewed the contents. When she looked up, her expression had hardened. Ms. Kezia Ashford. According to this record, you pleaded guilty to embezzling $43,000 from your previous employer. The conviction was sealed as part of a plea agreement that included restitution and a prohibition on involvement in financial fraud. Decision-making. How do you accuse your mother of financial incompetence when you've been convicted of stealing $43,000? The irony wasn't lost on anyone in that courtroom. Kezia sat silent, face drained of all color. Wade stared at his sister like he was seeing her for the first time, which, in a sense, he was. She'd hidden the conviction from everyone, including her brother. Your Honor, I said quietly, my daughter expressed concerns about my ability to manage finances. I trust the court can now evaluate those concerns in their proper context. Judge Hargrove nodded slowly. The court will take this information under advisement when weighing Ms. Ashford's testimony. The courtroom doors swung open. Every head turned. A woman walked down the center aisle, tall, composed, dressed in a charcoal suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was 43 years old, and I hadn't seen her in 3 years. Sidoni, my secret. My daughter from the life Wade never knew existed. She walked past the gallery, past the stunned faces of her half-siblings, and stopped before the bench. Your Honor, I'd like to testify about my mother's mental competence. She turned and looked directly at Wade. I'm Sidoni Caldwell. Lorraine Ashford is my mother. Sidoni's testimony had lasted 40 minutes. When she finished describing my business decisions over the past decade, each one sharp, strategic, profitable, Wade's competency argument lay in ruins. Judge Hargrove called the next witness. The handwriting expert projected the signatures onto the courtroom screen. My name, written by hands that weren't mine. Dr. Eleanor Whitfield approached the display with the confidence of someone who testified in over 200 cases during her 30 years as a forensic document examiner. At 64, she still wore the reading glasses on a chain around her neck that she'd probably used since her first courtroom appearance. Over 2 decades, Mrs. Ashford's signature shows remarkable consistency, she began, pointing to a row of authenticated bank signatures. Note the baseline angle, the pressure distribution, the spacing between letters. These are the hallmarks of an established hand. She clicked to the next slide. The contested franchise transfer documents appeared alongside my authentic signatures. These documents do not match that pattern. Harold Finch rose. Signatures naturally evolve over time, Your Honor. Evolution is gradual. Dr. Whitfield replied without looking at him. These variations are sudden and specific. They appear in documents allegedly signed within days of authenticated samples that show none of these characteristics. She magnified the screen further, focusing on a single letter. I'd like to draw the court's attention to the lowercase y in Lorraine Ashford. That little loop. I'd watched him write it 1,000 times as a boy, his pencil curling twice at the bottom of every Y. His 3rd-grade teacher had wanted to correct it. I told her, no, let him keep his quirks, let him be himself. I never imagined that quirk would condemn him. This double loop, Dr. Whitfield continued, is what we call a retained childhood formation. It's a handwriting habit established before age 10 that typically persists throughout life. It appears in every contested document. Judge Hargrove leaned forward. And in Mrs. Ashford's authenticated signatures, not once in 20 years of samples, Mrs. Ashford forms her Y with a single descending stroke. No loop whatsoever. The courtroom absorbed this in silence. I watched Wade's profile, the tension in his jaw, the whiteness of his knuckles against the armrest. Constance rose from her seat in the gallery. Your Honor, I have additional documentation that may assist Dr. Whitfield's analysis. She approached the bench carrying a manila folder different from the one containing Kezia's fraud records. This one was older, the edges worn soft from decades in storage. These are handwriting samples from a 1987 custody evaluation, Constance explained. They include work samples from Wade Ashford, then 8 years old. She handed the folder to Dr. Whitfield, who spread the contents across the evidence table. Construction paper drawings, spelling tests, A letter to Santa Claus asking for a bicycle. Wade had forged my name with his own fingerprint embedded in every stroke. A criminal who signed his confession without knowing it. The same double loop appears throughout, Dr. Whitfield confirmed, consistent with retention of childhood formation into adulthood. Harold was on his feet again. Objection! Childhood samples from 40 years ago cannot possibly be relevant to. Overruled. Judge Hargrove's voice carried the weight of someone who'd heard enough desperate objections for one day. The pattern consistency is highly probative. Continue, Dr. Whitfield. In my professional opinion, Wade Ashford authored these signatures. Dr. Whitfield removed her glasses and looked directly at the judge. The probability of coincidence is less than 1 in 50,000. 1 in 50,000. The number hung in the courtroom air like a verdict. Wade sat motionless. His lawyer had stopped whispering. Even the court reporter's fingers had paused over her keys. The court will take a 30-minute recess. Judge Hargrove struck her gavel once. Mr. Ashford, I strongly suggest you confer with your counsel regarding the implications of this testimony. People rose. Conversations began in hushed tones. Harold leaned toward Wade, whispering urgently about settlement options, criminal exposure, damage control. Wade didn't respond. He stared at the projected image still frozen on the screen, his childhood handwriting beside the forged signatures. The evidence of his crime displayed in his own unchangeable habit. Kezia was gone. I scanned the defense table, the gallery, the doors. My daughter had already fled, slipping out when the probability numbers were announced. She'd calculated the odds and decided her brother wasn't worth the exposure. I stepped into the hallway, needing air that didn't taste like courtroom tension. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the preview and image attachment. I opened the message. Vernon. Unconscious. Bleeding from a wound on his temple. Slumped against a warehouse wall I didn't recognize. His eyes were closed. His shirt was stained dark. Below the photograph, 3 words. Stop talking, now. My hands went cold. The phone nearly slipped from my grip. Wade wasn't just fighting to keep my money. Someone, whether him or whoever he'd hired, was willing to kill to make sure I lost. The murder-for-hire plot wasn't a threat anymore. It was happening. The courtroom doors opened behind me. The bailiff announced that recess was ending. I had 30 seconds to decide walk back in and continue testifying or stop talking and hope Vernon survived. The threat photo burned in my pocket like a brand. Vernon unconscious, bleeding, a message demanding my silence. I walked back into the courtroom anyway. Some battles you fight even when the cost is personal, especially when the cost is personal. I stood as Judge Hargrove called the session to order and spoke the words that would end my son's world. One final witness, Your Honor. Harold Finch rose immediately. We have no record of additional witnesses in discovery. This is a civil matter, Mr. Finch. Judge Hargrove adjusted her glasses. I'll allow it. Mrs. Ashford, call your witness. I called Sidoni Caldwell to the stand. Every head in the courtroom turned toward the gallery doors. Sidoni rose from the back row with the composed grace I'd watched her develop over 4 decades. She walked down the center aisle, her heels clicking against marble. Her charcoal suit projecting exactly the professional authority this moment required. Wade stared at her with naked confusion. Who is this? I don't know this woman. Beside him, Kezia had slipped back into the courtroom during recess, drawn by curiosity or fear. I couldn't tell which. Her face drained of color as Sidoni passed. Kezia recognized her. I saw it in her face. The Paris photograph she'd found months ago while searching my files for ammunition. She'd tried to weaponize it without understanding what she was looking at. Oh God, Kezia whispered. It's the woman from the photo. What photo? Wade demanded. What are you talking about? Kezia didn't answer. She couldn't. The truth was walking toward the witness stand, and there was nothing either of them could do to stop it. Sidoni placed her hand on the Bible. The bailiff swore her in. She sat with the composure of someone who'd been preparing for this testimony her entire adult life. Constance approached. Please state your full name and your relationship to Lorraine Ashford. Sidoni Marie Caldwell. Her voice carried clearly. Lorraine Ashford is my mother. I was born in October 1972, 3 years before she married Marcus Ashford. The gallery erupted in murmurs. Judge Hargrove's gavel struck twice. Wade's face cycled through confusion, denial, and something approaching horror. His world collapsed like a sandcastle meeting the tide. Everything he thought he knew dissolving in an instant. "That's impossible," he managed. "Mother would have told me. She would have—" "Your mother kept me private for her own reasons." Sidoni's gaze was steady. "Reasons that are becoming clearer by the minute." "Ms. Caldwell?" Constance consulted her notes. "Please describe your professional credentials for the court." "I'm a corporate attorney based in Paris, specializing in international asset protection and cross-border trust administration." Sidoni paused, letting the implications settle. "I've been a minority stakeholder in SW Holdings LLC since 2013. Harold Finch's chair scraped against the floor as he shot upright. "Your Honor, this changes everything." "Indeed it does." Judge Hargrove leaned forward. "Continue. Ms. Caldwell, my mother established a trust in my name 12 years ago. That trust holds a 17% stake in SW Holdings. Under Florida corporate law, any transfer of controlling interest requires notification and consent from all stakeholders above 10%. She turned to look directly at Wade. "No one notified me. No one requested my consent, which means every asset transfer you've attempted is legally void." Wade's lawyer sank back into his chair. The defense had just lost its last wall. "Ms. Caldwell," Constance continued, "were you aware of the petitioner's attempts to have your mother declared mentally incompetent?" "I was. My mother contacted me 6 months ago when the fraudulent transfers began. I've been monitoring the situation from Paris and coordinating with her legal team. 42 years I'd kept Sidoni's existence from this family. Not out of shame, out of protection. From exactly this moment when my legitimate children might try to use her against me, or worse. Try to cut her out of what was rightfully hers." Wade turned to face me. The confusion had burned away, leaving only rage. "You lied to me my entire life." "I kept a secret," I replied quietly. "There's a difference. You lied to steal from me. You forged my signature. You tried to have me declared incompetent. You hired someone to kill me." The courtroom went silent. "You never asked about my past." "Wade?" I held his gaze without flinching. "You assumed you knew everything about me. That assumption was your mistake." Something snapped behind his eyes. Wade lunged across the defense table, his face twisted with fury, his hands reaching for my throat. 2 bailiffs intercepted him before he'd cleared the table, wrestling him back, forcing his arms behind him. "If I can't have what's mine, nobody will!" He was screaming now, all pretense of control abandoned. The handcuffs clicked around his wrists as he thrashed against the bailiff's grip. "Tell them! Kezia, tell them what we did!" Kezia's face went white as bone. The entire courtroom stared at her, Judge Hargrove. She'd know the gallery. Sidoni. Me. Whatever secret my children shared was about to surface. And from the look on Kezia's face, it was worse than anything we'd uncovered so far. The bailiffs dragged Wade from the courtroom while he screamed. Judge Hargrove called a 30-minute recess to restore order. Kezia sat frozen, saying nothing about whatever secret her brother had nearly exposed. I found Wade alone in the hallway during recess, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face wet with tears he hadn't bothered to hide. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. For a moment, I saw the boy he'd been at 8 years old, the one who'd cried when his hamster died, who'd crawled into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd trusted me to fix everything that frightened him. "Mom," his voice cracked. "I didn't know what I was doing. I was scared of losing everything." "You knew enough, Wade." I stopped 3 feet away, close enough to see the desperation in his eyes, far enough to maintain the boundary he'd shattered. "You knew enough to forge my name, to plan my imprisonment, to hire someone to ensure I never came home." "That wasn't supposed to— I called it off. I called it off before." Before Vernon got attacked this morning. The photograph burned in my pocket. Someone didn't get the message. His face crumpled. I'm still your son. Yes. The word tasted like ash. And that's what makes this so much worse. I touched his shoulder once, a goodbye, not a comfort, and walked away. Every step felt like tearing off a piece of my own heart. But some wounds you inflict on yourself to survive. Some bonds you sever to stay whole. Behind me, Wade's sobbing echoed off the marble walls. I didn't turn back. Court reconvened at 2 o'clock. Wade sat slumped at the defense table, eyes vacant, fight extinguished. Harold Finch shuffled papers with the mechanical movements of a man who knew he'd already lost. Judge Hargrove didn't waste time. The evidence presented today establishes a clear pattern of forgery, fraud, and financial manipulation. Her voice carried the weight of finality. All contracts bearing forged signatures are hereby voided. All accounts associated with the disputed transfers are frozen, pending criminal investigation. Harold rose. Your Honor, we intend to appeal. That is your right, Mr. Finch. But your client will await that appeal without access to any disputed funds. Judge Hargrove continued without pause. Control of all assets is transferred to SW Holdings, LLC, to be administered by the legitimate stakeholders. I am referring this matter to the State Attorney's Office for criminal prosecution on charges of forgery, fraud, and conspiracy. The gavel struck. Final. Kezia stood, gathering her purse, moving toward the exit with the calculated casualness of someone trying not to run. Ms. Ashford, Judge Hargrove's voice stopped her mid-step. You are not free to leave. Kezia turned slowly. Your Honor, your brother's statement suggests potential conspiracy, combined with your prior fraud conviction. I'm ordering you detained pending investigation. He was ranting, Kezia's composure cracked. He didn't mean... That will be determined by investigators. Bailiff, please escort Ms. Ashford to the holding area. Kezia in handcuffs. My daughter. The thief. Being led away beside my son. The forger. I built a dynasty. They built a prison around themselves with every lie they told. The courtroom emptied slowly. Constance touched my arm as she passed, a silent acknowledgement that we'd accomplished what we'd set out to do. Sidoni waited by the gallery doors, her expression unreadable. We walked out together, past the security checkpoint, through the lobby, down the courthouse steps into late afternoon light. The Miami sunset painted everything gold to the limestone facade, the palm trees, the face of the daughter I'd hidden for 30 years. Everything looked like a beginning. We sat on the warm steps, neither of us ready to leave yet. Do you regret any of it? Sidoni asked quietly. I considered the question. The 30 years of secrets, the missed birthdays, the holidays spent apart, the phone calls that could never be long enough, the distance I'd maintained to protect her from exactly the family she'd just helped me defeat. I regret the lost time with you, I said finally. Every birthday I missed, every conversation we should have had. But protecting you from this family? I shook my head. No, never. Sidoni's hand found mine on the warm marble step. Her fingers were longer than mine, her grip stronger. She'd grown into someone remarkable without my help, or perhaps because of my absence. From now on, she said, not alone anymore, either of us. I squeezed her hand. The evening breeze carried jasmine and salt air from the bay, somewhere in the building behind us. My other children were being processed into a system they'd thought they could manipulate. My phone buzzed. A text from Constance. Vernon is awake. He's talking, and what he's saying is going to change everything. Come to Jackson Memorial. Now. I showed Sidoni the screen. Her expression shifted from peace to alertness in an instant. The attack on Vernon, she said. Someone sent that threat photo while we were in court. Someone who isn't Wade or Kezia. They were both in the courtroom when it arrived. The battle wasn't over. It had just revealed another front. Sidoni stood and offered me her hand. Jackson Memorial. Jackson Memorial. Vernon's testimony had confirmed everything. The attack was ordered by a fixer Wade hired through 3 layers of intermediaries. The police arrested the man within 48 hours. Wade's plea negotiations collapsed when the murder-for-hire evidence surfaced. 3 months later, I sat in the office I'd built from nothing, reading numbers that proved the empire had never really belonged to anyone but me. Ramona knocked twice before entering, a manila folder in her hands. She'd stopped asking permission to bring good news. January numbers are in. She laid the report on my desk. 2.3 million across all locations. Best month since 2023. I scanned the columns. Every spa showed green. The Coral Gables location, the one Wade had staffed with his cronies, led the chain. Coral Gables, up 40% since we removed Wade's people. Ramona's smile carried 12 years of vindication. Turns out customers prefer competence over nepotism. The morning sun warmed my shoulders through the window. Outside, Miami glittered like it always had, indifferent to my battles, beautiful regardless. I'd spent 18 months fighting for the right to sit in this chair again. Now that I had it back, the victory felt quieter than I'd expected. I slid a document across the desk. Ramona picked it up, eyes scanning. Her hands began to tremble before she reached the second paragraph. Chief Operating Officer, I said, 5% equity stake in SW Holdings. You earned this 15 years ago. Ramona, I'm sorry it took this long. Her hands shook as she held the contract. 15 years of 4 a.m. phone calls, of covering Wade's mistakes when I wasn't watching, of believing in me when my own children didn't. This was the least I owed her. Lorraine, I don't know what to say. Say you'll help me build it even bigger. Say you'll stay when other offers come. I stood and extended my hand. Say yes. She took my hand. Her grip was firm, her eyes wet. Yes. We stood there for a moment, 2 women who'd survived what should have destroyed us. Then Ramona laughed, a release of tension 15 years in the making, and excused herself to call her husband. The afternoon brought less welcome communication. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered against my better judgment. Mrs. Ashford, this is Mitchell Crawford from Hartwell & Associates. The voice was young, professionally sympathetic. I'm representing your son in his upcoming sentencing hearing. The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I set it aside. I'm listening. Wade is facing serious time. Mrs. Ashford, the forgery charges alone carry up to 15 years. Combined with the fraud and conspiracy counts, he paused, letting the weight settle. A visit from you, perhaps a character statement, could significantly influence the judge's perception. What do you say to the son who tried to steal your life? What words exist for that kind of goodbye? I understand the situation, Mr. Crawford. Then you'll consider, I won't visit. The words came out steadier than I felt. I won't write character statements or appear at sentencing to plead for leniency. Silence on the line. Then, Mrs. Ashford, he's your son. That's exactly why this is the hardest thing I've ever done. I watched a pelican glide past the window, unconcerned with human complications. But I'll tell you what I will do. If subpoenaed, I'll testify truthfully. Not to help him, not to hurt him, just the truth. The truth won't help his case. Then perhaps he should have made different choices. I kept my voice level. Some consequences must be faced alone. That's not cruelty, Mr. Crawford. That's respect for the person he might still become. The lawyer tried twice more to change my mind. I declined twice more, then ended the call. I deleted his number like closing a door I'd kept open too long. Some rooms need to stay empty. Some relationships end not with dramatic confrontations, but with quiet decisions made in afternoon offices, witnessed only by the Miami skyline. Ramona appeared in the doorway, her signed contract in hand. She'd seen enough of my face to read the situation. Are you okay? I turned from the window. The sun had shifted, painting everything in warmer gold. I will be, and I meant it. I built this from nothing once. I'll build something new from the pieces. She nodded, understanding without needing details, and returned to her new office down the hall. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it. Another lawyer, another plea, another attempt to pull me back into a past I'd survived. But the notification showed an email, not a call, from Paris. I opened it. The subject line read, "Architectural plans attached for your approval." Below that, Sidoni had written a single line. The Lorraine Ashford Women's Wellness Center, Miami. Let's build something that outlasts all of us. I clicked the attachment. Renderings filled my screen. Clean lines, open spaces, natural light flooding through floor-to-ceiling windows. A building designed to heal, to welcome, to endure. My daughter was building me a legacy. I smiled for the first time in months. Then I picked up the phone to call her back. The call with Sidoni had lasted 2 hours. We'd reviewed every rendering, debated ceiling heights and natural lighting, laughed about details that didn't matter and mattered completely. When I finally hung up, my face ached from smiling. The letter arrived the next Tuesday morning. Tennessee postmark. Handwriting I didn't recognize until I saw the signature at the bottom of the 3rd page. Vernon. I stood in my kitchen holding the envelope. Coffee cooling on the counter. Tennessee. Not Vegas, not Miami. Somewhere I couldn't picture him at all. The handwriting was steadier than I remembered. None of the tremors that came from too many sleepless nights at blackjack tables. None of the cramped urgency of a man writing between losing hands. This was different. Careful, deliberate. I sat at my breakfast table and unfolded 3 pages of plain white paper. The first paragraph addressed something 20 years old. I left because I was already losing myself to the tables. I didn't want you to watch me disappear. That was my mistake to make, not yours to carry. I told myself I was protecting you. The truth is, I was protecting my addiction, choosing it over everything, including you. I'm sorry I never said goodbye. I'm sorrier that I convinced myself you didn't deserve one. 20 years ago, I would have given anything for this letter. 20 years ago, it might have changed everything. Now it was just history finally writing itself down, an old wound acknowledged so it could finish scarring over. The second paragraph was harder. Wade found me through a collection agency that bought my markers. $200,000 in debt. And your son offered to clear it all. The price was simple: become useful against you. I knew it was wrong. I told myself the information I gave him was harmless, that I was just confirming things he already suspected. That was a lie I needed to believe. I set the letter down, took a breath, picked it up again. When they put me in the hospital, I had 17 hours to lie there and think. The doctor said I was lucky the head wound looked worse than it was. But those hours in that bed, waiting to find out if I'd wake up whole or damaged. I realized something. I'd finally hit a bottom so deep even I couldn't pretend it was normal. Your son hired someone to kill me because I'd become inconvenient. And the only person surprised by that was me. What do you do with an apology that asks for nothing? How do you respond to someone who finally expects exactly what they deserve, which is silence? The third paragraph was the shortest. I'm in a residential program now, 90 days clean as of yesterday. No slot machines, no cards, no sports books. Just meetings and therapy and learning to recognize the lies I've told myself for 40 years. I don't expect you to respond to this. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to become someone who wouldn't have betrayed you. 20 years late, but trying. There's no return address because I'm not asking for anything. This letter is for you to do whatever you want with. Keep it, burn it, throw it away. It's yours now, not mine. He'd signed it simply, Vernon. I read the letter twice. The second time, I noticed things I'd missed, the even margins, the consistent spacing, the complete sentences without the fragmented thinking of someone still in crisis. This wasn't a letter from the Vernon I'd known. This was someone new, someone working to become someone else. I folded the pages carefully along their original creases. My desk drawer held old photographs, property deeds, The original articles of incorporation for SW Holdings. Important things. Memory things. I placed the letter inside, between a photo of my parents and the first lease I'd ever signed. I put the letter in the drawer, like pressing a flower preserved, but no longer alive. A memory of something that used to grow. He'd asked for nothing. That was the first honest thing he'd given me in 20 years, and somehow that made it possible to accept. I closed the drawer. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just done. The morning sun shifted through my windows, warming the kitchen I'd fought to keep. Outside, Miami continued its indifferent, beautiful existence. Inside, I sat with the strange lightness of closure I hadn't known I needed. My phone rang. Sidoni's name lit the screen. I answered, expecting more discussions about floor plans and contractor bids. Mom! Her voice was different, excited, nervous, younger somehow. I need to tell you something. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's... She laughed, a sound I'd heard too rarely in our reconnected months. I've met someone here in Paris. It's serious. We've been together for 2 years, and I should have told you sooner, but I wasn't sure how. And now, with everything that's happened... Sidoni, breathe, she breathed. Then, her name is Margot, and she wants to meet you. Her. My daughter had secrets of her own, and she was finally ready to share them. Her name is Margot, I repeated into the phone, letting the words settle. Tell me about her. Sidoni's relief was audible across the Atlantic. 2 weeks later, she stood in my kitchen, holding a wooden spoon like a weapon she didn't know how to use. And I realized we were both learning from scratch. Margot says pasta is impossible to ruin. Sidoni surveyed my pristine countertops with suspicion. I told her she's never met the Ashford women. I built a wellness empire. I can boil water. That's what I said before I set my first kitchen on fire in Paris. She'd arrived with grocery bags and a recipe written in Margot's handwriting, neat, precise, annotated with smiley faces in the margins. I'd never used half the appliances in this kitchen. The pasta pots still have its original price tag. We moved around each other carefully at first, bumping elbows at the cutting board, reaching for the same knife. Gradually, we found a rhythm. Sidoni chopped while I stirred. The conversation flowed easier than the cooking. Tell me more about Margot, I said, watching garlic sizzle in olive oil. How did you meet? She's a journalist, investigative. We met at a conference on women in business 3 years ago. Sidoni smiled at the memory. She spent 3 hours arguing with me about capitalism and corporate ethics. And you fell for her. I respected her first. That came before everything else. She challenged me in ways nobody else bothered to. Sidoni glanced up from the tomatoes. The rest followed. We moved around the kitchen like dancers learning a new routine, awkward at first, then finding the music neither of us knew we shared. She handled the vegetables with more confidence than I handled the sauce. I handled the wine better than either of us handled the stove. While the sauce simmered, I told her the story I'd never told anyone. Your grandmother gave me $8,000 when I was 23, her burial fund, every penny she'd saved for a dignified death. The words came easier than I expected. She said she'd rather rot in a cardboard box than watch me waitress forever. Sidoni's knife paused mid-chop. Did you pay her back? Tenfold. Built her a mausoleum in Oakwood Cemetery. Marble. Fresh flowers every week for 15 years. Until I moved to Miami. I stirred the sauce slowly. She never saw what I built. Died 6 months after I opened my first location. But she knew. She knew I was going to be something. My mother's burial fund. 39 years. And I'd never told anyone that story. Now I was telling my daughter, and it felt like handing her a piece of myself I didn't know I'd been protecting. I wish I'd met her, Sidoni said quietly. She would have loved you, would have spoiled you impossibly, and criticized everything I did wrong raising you. I laughed. Though I suppose I didn't raise you at all. You kept me safe. That was raising me, even from a distance. The pasta water boiled over. Neither of us noticed until the hiss of water on the burner broke the moment. "The pasta," Sidoni said, lunging for the pot. We salvaged what we could. Most of it had stuck to the bottom, slightly burnt on one side, overcooked on the other. Sidoni scraped it into bowls anyway, covering the damage with sauce. Margot is going to ask how the recipe turned out. Tell her it was perfect. It's burnt. Tell her it was perfect anyway. I handed her a fork. Because it was. We ate on the balcony, Miami glittering below us, like a city made of promises. The pasta was terrible, and the wine was excellent, and I couldn't remember the last time I'd enjoyed a meal this much. After dinner, with the dishes waiting and the night settling warm around us, Sidoni asked the question she'd been holding. "Are you lonely, Mom?" I looked out at the skyline I'd spent 30 years conquering, the buildings I'd helped fund, the empire I'd built and almost lost and rebuilt again. Lonely. I'd been lonely so long, I forgot it wasn't normal. Built walls so high I couldn't see over them. Then a daughter I'd hidden for 39 years knocked them down with burnt pasta and honest questions. "Less than before," I said. "Much less than before." Sidoni reached over and squeezed my hand. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere, and neither is Margot. She's already planning our next dinner. She insists on cooking herself." "I'd like that." We sat in comfortable silence, two women who'd spent decades apart, learning that proximity didn't require perfection. As we cleaned up together, Sidoni paused at the sink, hands still wet. "There's something else I need to tell you, about the wellness center designs." She dried her hands and pulled up blueprints on her tablet. "I included something in the plans I didn't mention." She zoomed in on the center of the building. A memorial garden, circular, open to the sky. Two benches facing each other across a small reflecting pool. The inscriptions made my throat tighten. One bench, for mothers who kept secrets to protect. The other, for daughters who forgave them anyway. I stared at those bench inscriptions until my vision blurred. For mothers who kept secrets to protect. For daughters who forgave them anyway. Sidoni had designed forgiveness into architecture. Some gifts don't require words. A week later, I wrote a check for exactly $50,000, the first amount Wade ever stole from me, and felt nothing but clarity. The pen moved across the paper with steady purpose. In the memo line, I wrote, "Legal Defense Fund." On a separate note, I added what the bank wouldn't record, not to help you escape justice, to ensure you face it fairly. That's what a mother does. 18 years ago, Wade took $50,000 to buy himself a Rolex and a weekend in Vegas. Now that same amount would buy him competent representation at trial. The money had come full circle. So had I. I sealed the envelope, addressed it to his lawyer, and placed it in the outgoing mail. Then I packed for Austin. The flight was smooth. 3 women in business class reviewing final details. Ramona had the staffing numbers memorized. Sidoni had the architectural specs on her tablet. I had champagne and the rare luxury of watching 2 people I trusted handle everything I used to grip alone. 40 new employees, Ramona said, scrolling through applications. Best pool we've had in years. Turns out people want to work for companies that survive scandals. Or companies run by women who don't quit, Sidoni added. Branch 13, in the old stories. 13 was unlucky. But I'd never believed in luck only in work, and will, and refusing to let anyone else write your ending. 13 locations now, spread across 4 states, each one built on the foundation of my mother's burial fund and my refusal to stop. Nervous? I asked Sidoni. Terrified, she smiled. First time being publicly connected to the company. First time standing next to you at anything official. You've been connected to it since before you were born. Now, the world just knows. She reached across the aisle and squeezed my hand. Ramona pretended not to notice, but I caught her smile. The Austin location gleamed in late afternoon light. Fresh paint, new equipment, 40 employees in matching uniforms waiting behind a red ribbon. Local press had shown up not for the scandal anymore, but for the comeback story everyone loves. 3 women cut the ribbon together, Cameras flashed, applause rolled through the crowd. "This company was built from $8,000 and a refusal to quit," I said into the microphone. Those years later, we add 40 new people to that legacy. Welcome to Serenity Wellness. 3 women cutting a ribbon. A year ago, I would have stood here alone, pretending that was strength. Now I knew better. Strength was admitting you needed people. Strength was letting them in. Sidoni raised her champagne glass. "To building things that last." Ramona lifted hers. "To the next 40 years." I drank to both. The celebration wound down around midnight. Staff headed home with gift bags and employment contracts. Sidoni went to her room to call Margot in Paris. Ramona had an early flight back to Miami. I couldn't sleep. 5 in the morning found me on the hotel balcony, watching Austin wake up. The coffee was terrible. That thin hotel brew that tastes like regret and convenience, but I drank it anyway. Some rituals matter more than quality. I took inventory the way I'd learned to do after every battle. Lost a son to his own choices. Gained a daughter who'd been waiting 39 years. Lost a marriage that was already dead. Found myself in the wreckage. Lost a husband to divorce papers I'd never have to sign. Gained a COO who'd earned her place. Lost faith in the family I'd built. Found family in the people I'd chosen. The math didn't balance. It never would. Wade would stand trial in March. Kezia had taken a plea deal, 3 years owed, eligible for parole in 18 months. Vernon was still in Tennessee, 93 days clean and counting. The Wellness Center with its memorial garden was breaking ground next month. If you're in the middle of your own war right now, losing everything, trusting no one, wondering if there's anything worth saving, I want you to know there's an after. It doesn't look like you expect, but it exists. And it's enough. Okay was enough. Okay was more than I'd had in decades. And from okay, you could rebuild anything. The balcony door slid open behind me. Sidoni stepped out, 2 cups of better coffee in her hands. Hotel robes, bare feet, hair still tangled from sleep she hadn't quite found either. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. Thinking too loud. She handed me the cup, settled into the chair beside mine. The Austin sunrise painted everything in shades of gold and possibility, the skyline, the hills beyond, the face of the daughter I'd hidden for 39 years to protect. "What happens now?" she asked. I considered the question. The empire rebuilt, the family redefined, the future unwritten. "Now we find out," I said, "together." The sun rose over both of us, mother and daughter, finally in the same frame. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning a new chapter. And for the first time in 61 years, I couldn't wait to see what happened next. And to you listening to my story, remember this: some lessons cost everything to learn. Looking back on everything, the betrayal, the courtroom battles, the moment I realized my own children wanted me gone, I see now what I missed for too long. I trusted blindly. I assumed love meant loyalty. Don't make my mistake. Watch the people around you, not with suspicion, but with clarity. The ones who take you for granted today may be planning against you tomorrow. This revenge story taught me something I wish I'd learned decades earlier. Protecting yourself isn't cruelty, it's wisdom. Family bonds are precious, but they don't excuse betrayal. When my children tried to destroy me, I didn't become bitter. I became strategic. I believe God put me through this grand drama story for a reason, so I could share it with you. So you could recognize the signs, so you might protect yourself before it's too late. Your kindness is a gift. Don't let anyone weaponize it against you. If this revenge story resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? Share your experience in the comments. Your words might help someone else going through the same thing. And if this grand drama story moved you, please share it with a friend who needs to hear it. Subscribe so we can continue this journey together. Thank you for staying until the very end of this revenge story. Your presence here means more than you know. Some details have been adjusted for narrative purposes, and any resemblance to real individuals is coincidental. The lesson, however, is very real. Take care of yourself, and may you always find the strength to protect what you've built.